Bullies mock the new kid, unaware he's a brutal fighter. Part 2. What happens when a bully refuses to accept defeat? When humiliation turns into blind obsession? Brian had already lost once. His reputation was shattered, his control over the school gone. But instead of moving on, he made a choice, a dangerous one. He called for backup. And now, Lucas wasn't just facing a bully. He was about to go up against a trained fighter, someone who had never lost a fight in his life. The school thought the battle was over, but the real fight was only just beginning. Brian hadn't spoken much since that day, the day Lucas took him down like he was nothing. At first, he thought the rumors would die down, that people would forget. They didn't. Everywhere he walked, he could hear them whispering, "Man, Brian got destroyed. I thought he was the toughest guy here. Did you see the video? He didn't stand a chance." He couldn't escape it. The laughter, the stares, the pity. It ate away at him night after night. He stopped showing up at the skate park, stopped joking around with Max and Leo, stopped being the Brian that everyone feared, because now he was just a joke. Until one night, staring at the ceiling, he grabbed his phone and made a call. "Jake," he muttered. His throat was dry. His pride burned. "I need you to help me with something." A pause, then a low chuckle on the other end. "Let me guess," Jake's voice was amused. "Some kid kicked your ass, and now you need Big Brother to clean up your mess." Brian's jaw clenched. "It wasn't a fair fight," he lied. "He caught me off guard." Another chuckle. "All right, little bro, tell me everything." And as Brian spoke, twisting the story to make himself the victim, he felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Because Jake wasn't just anyone. Jake was a trained MMA fighter, and soon Lucas was going to regret ever crossing him. Jake wasn't just an older brother, he was a machine. At 22 years old, he had already won multiple amateur MMA fights, trained under some of the best coaches in the state, and had a reputation for being ruthless in the ring. Brian always looked up to him, his strength, his confidence, the way no one ever dared to challenge him. And now, Jake was here. The first thing Brian felt when he saw him step out of his car was relief. Jake had that presence, that energy that made Brian believe things would finally be set right. "So, where's this kid?" Jake asked, cracking his knuckles. "The one who humiliated you?" Brian smirked. "He eats lunch alone, keeps to himself, acts all mysterious, like he's better than everyone." Jake nodded, scanning the schoolyard. "You said he knows how to fight." Brian hesitated. "I mean, yeah, but he got lucky. He's not like you, man." Jake gave him a sideways glance. "Doesn't matter. Everyone has a weakness. We just have to find his." That afternoon, Jake didn't go straight to Lucas. Instead, he watched, studying his movements, his posture, his reactions. And something about the way Lucas carried himself bothered him. The way he walked, not stiff, not trying to act tough, but balanced, controlled. The way he glanced around, not nervously but with awareness. The way he never reacted to Brian's old taunts. Jake had seen that kind of attitude before, not in street fights, but in fighters. Still, he shrugged it off. "Doesn't matter. I've beaten trained guys before. He won't be any different." The next day, he was ready. It was time for Lucas to get a real lesson in pain. Lucas had always trusted his instincts, and right now they were screaming at him. It started with the feeling of being watched. At first, he thought it was just the usual stares, the lingering curiosity from what happened with Brian. But this was different, more intense, more focused. By the second day, he knew exactly who it was. Jake. Lucas noticed the way he moved, the way he followed at a distance, never too close, never obvious, calculating. That was the first red flag. The second, Brian's sudden change in behavior. He wasn't trying to start fights anymore. He wasn't throwing insults or shoving people in the hallways. Instead, he was waiting, watching, like a man who knew something no one else did. Lucas wasn't stupid. This wasn't over, and whatever was coming was going to be worse. So he did the one thing that no one expected. He let it happen. Instead of running or avoiding it, he stayed in plain sight. Walked his usual path, ate at his usual spot, made sure Jake saw him, made sure he knew Lucas wasn't afraid, because fear was exactly what Jake was waiting for. But Lucas wasn't playing that game. He was playing his own, and when Jake finally made his move, Lucas would be ready. It happened after school. Lucas had just stepped out of the building when he heard it. "Hey, new kid!" He didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Slowly, he did anyway. Jake stood in the middle of the courtyard, cracking his knuckles. Brian was beside him, arms crossed, wearing a smug grin. A crowd started to form. Students whispered, pulling out their phones. They knew what was coming. Brian's revenge. Jake took a step forward, sizing Lucas up. "So you're the one who embarrassed my little brother?" he said, his voice amused. "Gotta say, you don't look like much." Lucas didn't respond. He just met Jake's stare, his face unreadable. That made Jake's grin widen. "Smart. You know there's no talking your way out of this." He rolled his shoulders, getting loose. "Come on, kid. Let's see what you got." The crowd held its breath. Brian was practically glowing with anticipation. This was it. Lucas didn't move at first. Then slowly, he took off his backpack, set it down neatly, and as he straightened up, something changed. His stance, his posture, the air around him. Jake noticed it immediately. The way Lucas positioned his feet, the slight bend in his knees, the way his hands stayed relaxed but ready. This wasn't some scared kid. This was a fighter, and for the first time, a small doubt crept into Jake's mind. Then Lucas did something no one expected. He smiled. Jake's stomach tightened. He had seen that kind of confidence before, and it never ended well. The moment stretched, thick with tension. The crowd watched in silence. Then Jake struck, fast. His right fist shot forward in a blur, aimed straight for Lucas's jaw. But Lucas wasn't there anymore. With a subtle shift, he sidestepped, the punch grazing past him by inches. Jake barely had time to register what happened before thwack! Lucas's elbow snapped up, tapping Jake's ribs just enough to let him know. "I could have broken you right there." Jake stumbled back, his eyes narrowing. This wasn't luck. This was precision. He came in again, this time with a feint, following up with a brutal left hook, the kind that had dropped trained fighters before. Lucas ducked, effortless. Then, as if mocking him, he did something that made the crowd gasp. He yawned. Jake felt something deep inside him crack, and then it hit him. The stance, the footwork, the way Lucas read his movements. It was familiar, too familiar. Memories crashed in years ago when he was just starting MMA. When his coach used to spar with him, using those exact same movements. His stomach twisted. "No, there's no way." But he had to ask. "Who trained you?" he demanded. Lucas finally spoke. "You already know." The blood drained from Jake's face. There was only one person who moved like that. Only one trainer who had ever beaten him effortlessly in a fight. His old coach, Lucas, had trained under the same master. Jake took an involuntary step back. Brian's grin faded, and the entire school realized Jake wasn't here to teach Lucas a lesson. Lucas was about to teach him one. Silence. The entire crowd stood frozen, waiting for Jake's next move. But Jake didn't move. His fists were still clenched. His body was still squared up, but something had changed. His confidence was gone. Brian noticed. "What are you doing?" he hissed. "You're stronger than him. Take him down." But Jake didn't answer. He knew the truth now. This wasn't a fight. This was a warning. Lucas wasn't just some kid who got lucky. He had been trained by one of the best. The same man who had once beaten Jake so badly in training that he almost quit MMA altogether. Lucas knew exactly how this fight would go. He had already won before it even started. Jake took a slow breath, then did something no one expected. He lowered his hands, then he turned and walked away. The crowd erupted in shock. Wait, what? He's leaving? Is he scared? No way! Jake's actually backing down? Brian was furious. Jake! He shouted. What the hell are you doing? He humiliated me. We had a plan. Jake stopped. Slowly, he turned to face his brother. No, he said. You had a plan. Brian blinked, confused. Jake stepped closer, his voice low. I don't fight battles I can't win. Brian scoffed. See, are you kidding me? You're afraid of him? Jake's jaw tightened. I'm smart enough to know when I've already lost. Lucas didn't smirk.